For the next two releases, we're going to be focused. For the next two releases, we're going to be focusing on the upper abdominals and the serratus anterior. Now, these two muscles generally tend to be tight simply because we don't get good hip extension. We default from hip flexion to hip extension, or we skip that phase in movement, and then we go directly into hyperextension. When we go directly into hyperextension, that puts us into this anterior pelvic shift. When we get an anterior pelvic shift, what that then leads us into is having this kyphotic rounded thoracic spine, and usually what ends up coming along for the ride. It's not for everybody, but for most people, they're going to tend to have some kinds of restrictions right here on their upper abdominal region and right here on their lateral rib region. So what we're going to do right now is try and rehydrate those tissues here so it will effectively give us a better capacity to achieve a better thoracic extension on a general basis and a better scapular positioning as well. If you have some kind of a scapular wing or something like that, that serratus and that upper abdominal region is going to be really problematic on that shoulder positioning. But if we can get that release, that will effectively give us better thoracic extension and just a better posture overall. So what we're going to do first and foremost is get into the upper abdominal regions. Our tool of choice this time is going to be our trusty soft medicine ball. When we do the release work, we want to ensure that we don't put pressure on our xiphoid process, which is this bone right here, right off of our sternum, right off of our breastbone. So we want to make sure that we're not putting that pressure right here on that xiphoid process, so we get off of the center with that. We have our linea alba that runs down that line here. We also don't want to put pressure there. What we're going to aim to do is go here, off to the side, and try and get into this oblique territory and this upper abdominal region right here. If you keep strumming upward a little bit higher, you'll begin to feel your ribs. That's not where we want to release. We want to release down and around here, just underneath that rib cage. Okay, so what we're going to do is get on top of this ball, like I am. Then I'm going to lay on top of it. What I like to do is, again, kind of like what we did with the adductor, is turn the leg out and then put my pressure over the top of that medicine ball. And if this is your first time releasing into your, even if it isn't your first time, ease into it when you do this release no matter what. I go with very soft pressure in the beginning. The organs are very sensitive, so you want to make sure that you're going to be sensitive to them. It's not to say that they're weak. Muay Thai fighters get kicked in the ribs and kicked in the stomach and punched in the stomach all the time. They get kneed in the stomach. It's not to say that this area is not like strong, but with that said, it's still important if we want the tissues to respond adequately that we release or not release some of the pressure, diminish the amount of pressure that we're going to put into this area. So start slow and then kind of work your pressure in. So I like to kind of put a lot of pressure on my elbows to begin with, put a great deal of pressure on my knees to hold me up, and then I'll kind of just set myself down onto that medicine ball until I find those tight regions. If you're a person who has like digestive problems, this may be an area that you want to focus on. You can even focus on trying to get lower into the abdominal wall, get into multiple aspects of the abdominal wall. So you don't have to just focus yourself on getting to the upper ends. If you feel like, hey, look, I don't have a lot of problems with my lower or my upper abdomen, I feel like I have more problem with my lower abdomen, feel free to go down and experiment in these areas. Again, just tread water lightly. Don't go crazy in there. Don't start putting a lot of pressure in these areas. Go subtle. Be very gentle on these areas. You'll get a much better release, which is why I'm telling you to do this. You don't have to go crazy with the pressure. Most of the time, more pressure just creates more tension, more of a defensive response in the body, and that's definitely what you don't want when you're doing release work. So the more subtle that you go here when it comes to the abdominal walls, the better the effect is going to be. And now I will say that because you are going to be putting less pressure, it may require you to spend more time releasing these areas. So that 2-minute mark may not be enough. It might have to be a base level of a 5-minute mark when you do this release if you want to get the most out of it. So again, just get in there. You can kind of roll back and forth, making sure that you're not putting that pressure on the ribs. Get just slightly underneath there to where the ball kind of slides underneath the ribs, and just move back and forth. Staying away from that center linea alba. Again, this is a great release for even if you have like a spiral dysfunction where your body tends to rotate more to the left. If you rotate more to the left, there's a good chance that the right side of your obliques is going to be super, super restrictive. So if you can get in there and break that up, it might promote more of a neutral rib cage and a neutral thoracic spine. Okay, so that's the upper abdominal release. Now we're going to get into the serratus, which is going to also be highly influential on that rounding in the upper body. And the way that we do that one is we're going to, again, go right here on this region of the rib cage, okay? So you'll feel like if you're a person that has fairly well-developed lats, you'll find it right off the lat. But if you don't, just think about that you'll have your lateral rib cage right here, and you're going to get just slightly in front of that point. You'll keep your arm up like so. You extend out the arm. Kind of similar to what we were doing with the IT band release in terms of positioning. Then from there, I just keep the arm extended, and I let gravity do the work as I get into the serratus. We're not only getting into the serratus here, we're actually also getting into the intercostal muscles. Those have a lot to do with your breathing. Well, they have more to do with your movement than they do your breathing, but if you have problems breathing, this will be an area that will help you get more breath. It'll help you volumize your breath a little bit further, help you breathe deeper on a general basis. So this release right here is actually very effective for creating better lung capacity through good biomechanics, obviously. So again, this is one, you don't have to ease up too much here because you're kind of putting pressure on bones and muscles since you're on the rib cage. You can be a little more aggressive on this. Obviously, with every release, try easing into it, but you don't have to worry so much about this. It's not like the abdominal wall. You can put a little more pressure here. It's not necessarily going to hurt. These two won't necessarily be painful since they're a little bit more gentle. On a general basis, we're using a softer tool, so they won't be painful. So what you'll just kind of have to do is see if you can kind of feel like, I wouldn't call it a tingling sensation, but just in general, a slight stretch in the tissue. So if I go like this and I shift my body from one direction to the other, I can feel like my ribs stretching to some degree. So the idea is to kind of just pinpoint the area as you do the serratus right here. You'll find a spot and then kind of rotate your body a little bit. I kind of lengthen my body down. You guys will see I'm kind of stretching myself down that way. Going up doesn't work as effectively. I generally tend to find that if I go down this way and I go in this direction, I'll start feeling a stretch in my rib cage. Take a nice deep breath to create expansion, because if I breathe, that expands the intercostals, and that will help me get the ball in between those ridges in the rib cage, and that will obviously create some added benefit because we're getting into deeper spots. But yeah, these are two generally pretty basic releases. The abdominals are a bit invasive, but so be careful with that. Serratus is a little bit less. Still be careful, but with that said, you can put a little bit more pressure on this general area. Anyway, let's move on to our last technique for this week.